We don't know what's it going to look like next year or the next fiscal cycle. Let's do it because once again, you've proven that you were able to do way more with less in this year's budget. So our city employees deserve that. I've seen not a complete analysis of the pay disparities between City of Oviedo and other surrounding towns. I've seen how much are they paying for healthcare benefits. I think it's safe to say we all acknowledge that we're not as competitive as we probably could be, and we hope to one day be. But I just want to encourage you to adopt this budget. This is an awesome budget. So thank you, and congrats to all of you guys tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Is there anybody else wishing to address council? All right, that's then a public comment. So there's only one item on the agenda, and that's the proposed budget amendment. So Mr. Cobb or Mr. Boop?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a few things. Just wanted to let you know that since our last work session, we did go back and we took another look at everything. We went back to the directors and we did a lot of discussion and actually reprioritized the capital items. We came up with a funding plan. I've got to give all the credit goes to Mr. Boop and Ms. Jones and Ms. Todora. They came up with a plan that was able to balance the budget at the existing millage rate. They have a plan that is maintaining our level of service in our operations, and it also addressed what we feel is the most immediate needs on capital. Ms. Jones actually even came up with a way that we could be creative in doing that as well. At the last meeting, we talked about the 3% use of fund balance. We're going to recommend that we don't go the full 3%, that we hold back just in case. And so, but there is some use of the fund balance, it's recommended, but not the full 3%. But we do have some ideas for you. Mr. Boop can walk you through everything. We also asked Mr. Dunleavy to come, as we traditionally do with the August work session, and let him give you an update on what's happening at the golf course. And so I don't know if you would like to hear from Mr. Dunleavy first or let Mr. Boop walk you through. I think it's probably better to hear from Mr. Dunleavy because he's all good news. Okay. And, but I do want to say that, like I said, the kudos go to the finance staff as well as the directors, because we asked them to do some very hard things. We gave them a sum of money. We gave them a list of projects and said, okay, this is what we think. Do you agree, or is there something else you'd like to do? And so they had to put their thinking caps on. And I think we've got a good program. And so I'll turn it over to, I guess, Mr. Dunleavy. We'll let him go first, and then Mr. Boop will walk you through the proposal.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody, for having me in tonight. I won't be the reason why this meeting goes long. So I'll be brief and with good news, as stated earlier. Hard to believe we started into this over 3 years ago, and we had a golf course that wasn't in very good shape, and a public that wasn't too enthralled with it. But we've been able to keep it on an upward trajectory during those 3 years with the help of the investment the city made to upgrade. Irrigation, was the most important thing we could have upgraded. We redid the bunkers as well. Clubhouse got a new roof. So what we've accomplished wouldn't have been possible without some of those investments ahead of time. When we first met, we kind of predicted that we'd sustain losses probably the first couple of years and get to close to break even in the third year, and that's kind of what's happened. The losses have diminished since year one. We had a small loss last year, and looks like we're on track this year to produce an operational profit. So I'm happy about that. That was a personal goal as well as a city goal for the club. So I'm pleased about that. Participation at the club has steadily increased. when the club was purchased by the city, the last owner did approximately 28,000 rounds. The last year he owned it, and we're on track to do 50,000 rounds this year. Similarly, revenue was in the $860,000 range the last year of the former owner, and it looks like we're going to be in the $1.7 million range this year. So excellent strides there. We're running several regular games that are, and these games help the property be more than just a golf course. It turns it into a club, and that's, it gathers people, and it's the people at a club that are more important than just the grass that's out there. The grass is important too, but I've always felt like you could have a healthy club if you had people grouped together that other people like to be with. So we've got Thursday Throwdown, a Friday Skins game. I personally run a Saturday morning Point Quota game. There's a couple other games too that are kind of within the club that aren't club sponsored. We also do some holiday events. Night golf we did last year was pretty successful. So we're just trying to keep this thing going on the trajectory it's on, and I think we can do that. So one point of pride, and this started actually before we became involved. There was a young man who's no longer with us, and Julie both had big interest in developing juniors, and that's just continued to grow. I really believe what we're doing there with juniors is second to none. Julie works tirelessly at it. She's got all kinds of junior camps for beginners and intermediates that go all summer long. She runs a U.S. Kids development program to help get them the skills to keep moving up. And then for the kids that are a little more accomplished, there's a PGA Junior League where they play matches against other clubs, and it's just a great, it's great training for them as they, hopefully grow into, some of them will be college athletes through golf also. Kim Young is another fellow I've known for a long time. He's a former PGA Tour player, so if he tells you something about your swing, he's probably right. And he's got an amazing personality. He's just been a great asset for us. And he's as busy as he can be teaching golf as well. So if it's true what they say about our teaching programs, good teaching programs, seeding the future for golf and our facilities, then we're going to be in good shape in the coming years. My operations staff and maintenance staff do a great job also. I can't thank them enough for understanding the goals that the city has and that I have on behalf of the city, and really understanding how important it is that we get to them, and they've just been a blessing for me, and it's been a lot of fun for me to be part of this whole thing and see the thing go successful. We've all dealt with COVID-19 this year. The impact of that early on wasn't good. We lost probably $40,000 or $45,000 in April compared to the year before, and that's when carts were mandatory one person, so that effectively cuts our ability to put golfers on the golf course in half. We did better than half, but it was a bit of a challenge. Since then, we've seen a lot of participation. Our governor was pro-golf through this whole thing, so that certainly helped. And golf in general, I think, across the country has seen an uptick as a result of COVID, and people using it as a vehicle to stay sane safely outside their houses. So golf's taken a lot of hits over the years, recent years especially, so it's nice to catch a break this time by. Just to close, I like to think that we've turned the reputation of Twin Rivers Golf Club around. When I first, probably the first 2 years I was there wasn't a day went by when somebody didn't come by the office and say, I swore I would never come here again. And it looks good out there, thanks. So it's been fun to have those conversations. The city staff and city government have been extremely supportive for us, and that's much appreciated. I can't think of better partners as we go through this. So it's been, it's just been a lot of fun to have that cooperation and see the thing go good. So that's about all I have for tonight. We're going to try and keep it going, and thanks again for having me in.
Is there any
Questions?
Nick, how is, can't tell you because of the mask. Kim, you can tell him that. How is the membership growing?
It's grown significantly. It's in the neighborhood of 100 at this point.
Really? And that was up
So
from,
it's actually at a point where you're not sure if you want more, frankly, for the
just for the
for the
events and stuff?
financials of the club, yeah.
That's up from like 6 when you took it over, right?
There was, I think it was, I believe it was like 25, 28,
Yeah.
something like that when we
Okay,
started.
good. I'll just tell you all, I play out there as often as I can. It's a fun course to play, and it's in great shape, and really, other than 2 or 3 other courses in the area, it's probably one of the most popular courses around, and really, really enjoyable. I think Julie told me the other day she's got 60 kids signed up for the fall junior program.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
She never
that's a lot of kids.
stops that.
So, and those are kids that are busy and not being idle and doing things they shouldn't be doing. They're out there playing golf and being focused on something useful, and that'll help them throughout their lives.
Perhaps COVID-19 has helped that as well, because a lot of stuff's not happening that they would normally be involved into.
Yep. So, great job. I keep, everyone knows I keep an eye on you, and I see nothing but good things over there, so.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And I'm not a golfer, but I've heard all the same feedback, so thank you for all you're doing, and for having veggie burgers and sweet potato fries. They are amazing. Is that still going on, the burger nights?
But
Or
we haven't
with
been running
COVID, not
burger
so
nights,
much?
yeah, we haven't been doing it just because of COVID-19, so I hope to get
Is
back
it going to
that
be coming
soon.
back eventually?
As soon as we're
Soon as
able,
you can.
The seating capacity isn't an issue, but the distancing is, so.
Is takeout available?
Takeout is available.
Okay, good to know. It's kind of cool that there is a restaurant that is walkable right there. So I hope everybody who's in that neighborhood will take advantage of a walkable, bikeable.
And the food's good, too.
Yeah, it really is.
Anybody else? Mr. Chudnow?
Good.
Ms. Smith? That's good. I just want to thank you. I mean, we took a big chance, a few years back on purchasing the golf course. It was the right thing to do, and we, a lot of us saw this moment coming with the revenue, to where we weren't in this deficit. But we couldn't have done it without your organization to head the way on it. And we really appreciate it. And I hear all good things about the golf course. I've heard the same thing from people. I've had people come up to me and they're like, should I go back? And I'm like, absolutely, you should. It's completely different, because there was a lot of people that came, before that swore that they would never come back, and now they're coming back and they're really enjoying the course. All the events, all the events that have taken place there, it's just a wonderful place, and it's probably one of our only parks right now that really pays for itself. So we really appreciate it, and y'all are doing a great job. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
appreciate it.
All right. All right. Then we want to go into the budget. And this is all good news too, right, Jerry? Or Mr. Boop?
For the most part, yes. One of the first things that I handed out to you before you came in today is a notice that we received from Wall Street, Standard & Poor's. We had been under surveillance since early August. And what they do from time to time is they take a look at our debt, our credit worthiness, and things of that nature. And so today we found out that our general obligation bonds are going to be upgraded from AA minus to AA. Now, that does not happen by happenstance. That comes as a result of good hard work, good hard decision making at this level, and maintaining a budget with adequate surplus in it and things of that nature. It's a great report. I encourage you to read it. What you have in front of you is the draft copy. We were trying to get the final copy from S&P today, but it didn't come out. We had a couple changes to it, some grammatical errors and some things like that. But nonetheless, it's for your reading pleasure. And kudos to Mr. Cobb for his great direction, and all of the directors as well for the contribution that they do. And I look at the finance department as just, we issue the report card, which is the decisions, based on the decisions that everybody else makes. So with that, we'll jump into the budget. So we met on July 27th, and July 27th we presented a balanced budget to you. And we've had a couple of adjustments since July 27th that we'd like to cover. One of the things that we always do this time of year following the July session is we know that we still have some straggler revenues coming out from the state, and we survey the state, we wait for that information, and there's also a couple of other adjustments that just randomly occur. So in addition to that, Mr. Pollock had requested that we take a very close look at our available use of fund balance, which is right there, and determine how much of that fund balance, which if we were to use it in its entirety, 3% of this number is about $890,000. So we took a very close look at that, and as Mr. Cobb said, we accumulated the list, went back to the directors and said, is this what you want? And we readjusted the list based on their request, and we were able to provide you a list of about $464,000 in capital items, which is included in attachment 4 to you, okay? But first of all, this is where we landed in July 27th. We have $29.6 million in revenue, and we were able to adjust that by adding another $120,000 in revenue, which is included in attachment 2, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But Kelly, if we can go down, just no changes whatsoever to any of the expense line items, no changes in transfers in or transfers out debt, everything remained the same. For all practical purposes, we are presenting to you a balanced budget. If we go to attachment number 2, attachment number 2 provides a list of the various adjustments that we were able to make. Taking a look, first of all, at the communication services tax. You've heard me say in previous sessions that at one point in time our communication services tax was $1.7 million. With this adjustment from the state, this next year our communication services taxes will be less than $1 million. So over the years we've lost about $800,000 in that one line item. As a result of the new contract that we're negotiating with Waste Pro and the franchise fee based upon the increase that will yield an additional $48,000 to the general fund. The revenue sharing, you'll recall the biggest line that we received adjustments from the state are the intergovernmental revenues coming in from the state. Revenue sharing is $47,000 less than we had previously presented to you. However, the half-cent sales tax came in at $149,000 greater than what we previously presented. So we just hope that that holds true. In addition, we are receiving another $39,000 in from the county for school resource officers. So that balances out for an additional $120,000 in revenues for this next fiscal year budget, 2021 budget. Any questions? Okay. Kelly, if we can go to attachment number 3. Attachment number 3, you'll see that this is where we added the $120,000 in. This was previously a $475,000 variance. And again, if we go down, none of the expenditures have changed. And if we continue to go down, there's the contribution. And one thing that we do want consensus on tonight is whether or not you want to fund the capital expenditures that we provided to you in attachment number 4. So Kelly, if you can flip over to attachment number 4 really quick. These are the items that staff came up with that, again, was passed back to the directors that were reprioritized, and the total is $464,000. So do we have your consensus to include that in the budget for the next fiscal year as a use of fund balance?
I've got a quick question. Is priority number 2 not there because it's already been covered or because it's not
Priority
really
number-
priority number 2? The thermal cameras. So my understanding is there is a check waiting in a seat
There is a
somewhere to
check.
pay that. Okay.
There is a check in
So
the
that
safe.
is, okay.
So-
So is that gone because that is an actual need or is there something that's a greater need? Because the donor of that will donate it to whatever.
Okay, well, we will consider the donation that we've already received to cover that.
Okay, so that really was priority number 2? Okay, very good.
So is there consensus to approve the 464?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, thank you. So bringing that back in, what that looks like is when we actually turn that line item on here for capital purchases, it brings it into impact from selected options. And again, with the increase in revenues that we received, the net result is a use of fund balance for the next fiscal year of $344,000. Very good position for the city going into next fiscal year's budget. So going down and looking at the bottom, what does that do for our operating reserve? We're projecting a beginning operating reserve next fiscal year of $7.8 million, a use of fund balance of $344, landing us at $7.4 million. Our target balance based on GFOA's best practices at 16.67% is $5 million. We meet that target. Our policy balance reserve at 15% is 4.5. We meet that target. We are currently at 24.63% based upon the adjusted budget for next year. And one of the things that Kelly added to this model is the spendable reserve. So this is the amount available to spend over and above the 15% policy balance. So we do have a cushion based upon our reserve. Any questions? All right. Kelly, if we can, let's go over to the right-hand side of the model. One of the things that the mayor had requested that we do is that we look for those out-of-the-ordinary items. So the out-of-the-ordinary items here are listed on the right-hand side of the schedule, which was provided to you in your attachment 3. What we would like to know is whether or not you want to keep these in the budget, and if there are any items that are removed from the budget, we would like to build them back into not a decrease of the budget, but an increase of the reserve for contingency, which is important for us. So if any of these items get cut, we would like to add them to the reserve for contingency. And the reason for doing that is we've cut so deeply in some of these line items. This is the operational side of the budget here. We've cut so deeply in some of these line items, we don't know where some of our problem children are going to crop up. And we want to make sure that we maintain adequate margins in the budget for the next fiscal year. So with that and your discussion, we will be glad to move through this list, or just approve, keep things the way they are, or however you would like to proceed, Mr. Pollack.
All right, is there any, honestly, I mean, we've got a balanced budget, we've got a you know, a use of fund balance that's, you know, typical to what we've seen in the past. You know, I honestly, all these items here, I mean, I could, you know, go through them and I see a need for most of these items that are on here. You know, the only item that, you know, I would even think about would be the council salary reduction, but with the balanced budget and everything else going on, I don't know if that, I mean, because that would have been like a 1 year, you know, 1 year adjustment to make up for everything, and I don't know if that's even necessary right now with the way the budget is. So, you know, with that, I mean, you know, are there things on here that people want to see removed?
I still am not comfortable with the federal lobbyist. The state lobbyist, I've done quite a bit of research into what other cities have gotten at the state level, and we are the only city in Seminole County that has gotten an appropriation, and it was significant. So I feel like he has brought back value to the city and has also chimed in a lot on the federal level. And often when I find out about federal issues, it is not from our federal lobbyist, but from our state level lobbyist. And League of Cities does have a team of lobbyists for the federal level. So I think we're covered there. I don't know what the Metro Orlando EDC membership does for the city of Oviedo. So I'm inclined to let that go. League of Cities, I think that offers value. I think their chamber, everybody seems to be comfortable with that for at least this season. Going down the list. I don't know that we need to have keychains and pins and giveaways this year, or a gala table at Kids House. And in the past, we haven't done that. And I don't even know what business retention is. What is that, the $5,000 for business retention?
That can go away.
Okay, fabulous. Let's move that over to be used for something more useful. On the council salary, I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as you. I am more comfortable if it is to be reduced, only for the people who are for sure going to be here the next year. So for Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Britton, and myself. But I think we can accomplish the same thing by get the salary and then go pick an item and donate back and knock it off that list. So I think anybody who is of that mindset, and I am, just write a check and get something for the police department, fire department, parks and rec. Pick whatever speaks to you most and make a donation for it.
Well, I don't think the only one who requested this was the mayor, and I don't think the mayor has veto power, line item veto, so I would assume just leave it just the way it is, and let the city manager decide if something needs to be on here or not on here. And if it doesn't need to be on here, he can come to us and consult us on that. But my first meeting as a city council member, I got trapped into voting on council salaries, and I said I'm never going to do it again. And I'm not going to consider adjusting council salaries. They are what they are. We'll leave them the way they are. You know, the state lobbyist does a good job. The federal lobbyist does a good job. They ought to stay where they're at. If they can prove their value, we'll keep them. If they can't, then we can decide as a group to get rid of them. I think everything up there has value, and just leave it the way it is. Brian's already said that business retention can go away, so that's up to him, and we can do that.
Okay.
What is staff's thought on if the federal lobbyist can go away? Can the federal lobbyist go away?
I think I said Brian can bring it to us and consult
Okay,
us on it.
okay,
We can
yeah,
decide as a group.
All right.
This isn't a personal wish list or veto list.
I was just curious, because we're at a work session, and if he has thoughts and it's like, go either way, then,
All right, you have my thoughts.
Mr. Chudner?
I'm comfortable with the list. The only question I would have is, I know with what our benchmarking, it marks us off against other cities. Has that been useful, or has that not been useful?
I can answer for my own opinion. I think it should go away, quite honestly. It's more of a labor-intensive exercise. When we finally get to look at what the results are, we find that we are doing is, when we compare very well. But getting the information has been very difficult lately. We've learned that a number of cities are starting to drop out of the organization. It seems to be struggling mightily, and it's not really providing the benefit that it did early on when we first started into it. Me personally, I would recommend that go away as well.
Having worked with that organization from trying to get information and looking at the information that's provided, because it's provided by the individual cities, not by a second party looking in, sometimes those numbers are not accurate.
That's always been my concern, to add to what Mr. Cobb has said. When you take a look at accounting, for instance, there are accounting standards that give you guidelines as to the rules that you must follow. My concern when looking at the information provided by the Florida Benchmarking Consortium is that there's no standards for the gathering of that information or the reporting of that information. So one city may do it one way, another city may do it another way. So when you go in to compare the information, you may not be comparing the same information, but it's represented to be the same. That's always been my concern. It's been a tool to look at, to do one of these with, but I've not put an awful lot of reliance on it in the long
Is there another way to get demographic comparisons that are accurate?
I can't answer that question well, but the CAFR that's presented every year has a list of demographic information in these statistical tables. That's what I tend to use when I go back and start comparing cities. Or what I do is I compare the financial results of one city to another. This is what I do. And if I see some anomalies, I usually call those cities and ask them questions as to how they gather their information and how their operations might potentially be different. But I'm not aware of another organization that gathers the kind of information that the Florida Benchmarking Consortium does at that level. It has a great intention, but I just don't put myself any reliance on the information when comparing it from city to city, or total reliance, excuse me. I've always been suspect about it.
Okay. So I would, if there's anything to be removed on that, I would say it'd be that. I've read everything else I'm good with.
What exactly does the EDC membership do? Like, can you still go to the EDC barbecue without being a member of the Metro Orlando EDC?
You can. There's a different fee. It's a
Okay,
different fee to attend.
What does it do?
The EDC membership basically gives us, it's.
The right to go to the barbecue?
Well, you get a discount right at the barbecue, yes. No, what it does, we actually, we have our own page of information there, on their website, in their files. If a prospective business comes in, because we are a member of the EDC, they will contact us and ask, do you have land available for this size of a project? They understand our challenges, that we don't have a lot of land that is, assembled together, that we have small pockets here and there. And so we don't get contacted a whole lot, but being a member allows us to at least be there when they are considering different locations, especially if someone's pursuing somewhere in Seminole County, or if they want to be near the university. They may give us a look and say, or give us a call and say, what about this property? Can you tell us all about it?
It sounds like you think they bring value, though. Am I getting the right vibe from that?
I think they do, yes. I
Okay.
think the opportunity's there. for us that should something pop up that we could fit with what that need is, it at least gives us that opportunity to be in the ballgame, so to speak. Whereas if we weren't a member of the EDC, then they wouldn't contact us at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one other thing. As far as I know the Kids House has been brought up. They are an invaluable for our abused, both physically and sexually abused kids. Go there, they're an invaluable asset, and to keep them up and running, the loss of that would be horrendous to this county and to the city of Oviedo.
Can we all just agree to go to it, though? And buy a table, like if each of us kicks in, we could still get a table.
It's the city's involvement that makes a difference. Having dealt with Kids House, been on their board, they are, without a doubt, it is a,
It's a great organization.
not only a
Better
great
than great.
organization, but it is it's a,
It's necessary.
well, unfortunately, it's necessary.
Yeah.
And it's a model for other ones that have forms similar to that in the county. I know, coming from South Florida, we didn't have something like Kids House, and dealing with a abused kid was a nightmare. And I ran a child abuse unit for 4 years. It was a nightmare what you had to do with the kids. When I came up here and Kids House was here, it's so much better for the abused child. I would never want to pull support from them.
Can we keep that in there and remain consistent? Because that's not exactly a charitable contribution, because it's a table.
It
'Cause
is a charitable.
It kind of is. I just want to be consistent. So if we're giving, like, that's a really good cause, but we heard from people who are working with people, trying to end human trafficking last meeting, and that's very important work, too. So whatever we do when it comes to charitable contributions, I think it's really important for us to be very consistent and try to treat everyone the same if they're in the same category. So I think by calling it a gala table, it may create a different, it puts it in it's in the promotional category versus a charitable giving category. But whatever our metrics are, like if somebody else comes and says, well, will you do a gala table here, then I would want to be able to say yes to everyone who asks for the same thing. Does that make sense? Doesn't seem like it bothers anyone. Okay.
I understand where you're coming from. but-
And I don't think we
But we
don't have limitless amounts of
Right,
money, so
that's
we
what I'm
can't do
saying.
it. So it's
Can't do
like,
it, so-
so do we not do it for anybody because we can't do it for all? And like, that's where I struggle, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, this is it's an organization that needs support. And it can't go away. It just can't go away. But I'm struggling with not being able to equally support all of the great causes, because there are so many nonprofits right now that are struggling in so many ways, and just they're trying to make it. So maybe over time we could figure out, well, we can all personally support or something, yeah.
All right, Councilmember Smith?
Excuse me, if I could, I'm in agreement with all of those things on there, particularly with the Oviedo Winter Springs Chamber of Commerce, because if I understand correctly, what we're trying to do is get more businesses so that the residents, homeowners, aren't encumbered so much with the tax burden. So I see all of those as playing a part somehow in us navigating toward a new frontier in the city of Oviedo. So those amounts don't scare me. But I must reiterate that, yes, we should support Oviedo Winter Springs Chamber of Commerce. And on the state lobbyists and federal lobbyists, in a past meeting, which one of the lobbyists, somehow we got $200,000, if I'm not
That's the
mistaken?
state level
State
lobbyists.
lobbyists.
And it was 500,000 the year before.
And then the federal lobbyists, at one point, I believe they got 1 million, 1.5
12 years
million?
ago?
It was quite a while ago.
1.5 million, so,
I can just give you my own personal about the
Okay.
federal lobbyist.
okay.
They have, over the past year, been more responsive and more helpful than they've ever been prior. The challenge at the federal level is as one of my mentors said one time, we are a gnat on a beach ball. Is that we're so small that we don't really stack up. There was a police grant that we were trying to get, and we didn't make it through the first 3 rounds. And Maurice Carlin, who's our primary, he said, "Don't worry, Brian, there's going to be 2 more rounds. You may get there." You know, the fire grant that we're trying to get, we're still trying to get funding there. Our state lobbyists, when you look at it, they've been responsive, they're communicating this, we've never had this level of communication. But when you say, what have they gotten us? They really haven't gotten us anything, they've just kept us informed about what's happening. Mayor's right, anytime our state lobbyist sends us a thing, they recently purchased an office in Washington, and so they add a little thing down at the end of our newsletter that says, on the Washington front, you know, and we get the information. Our state lobbyist has been very beneficial. From a monetary standpoint, and that since our relationship, we've received at least 4 allocations from the state that we never would have gotten without them. They have also been very beneficial in helping us with legislation, as far as legislation that would be harmful to the city. And you know, that's the one thing is that when Chris Carmody walks in the room, people listen. And that's the thing. Chris, we were trying to get a recreation allocation, and Chris, we sent Mr. Boulware up there, and Chris had everything already laid out for him. And unfortunately, the committee that was, when they got to Mr. Boulware, he had a total of 25 seconds to say what they had prepared for 3 minutes, you know. But Chris had already done the background work with the committee members. So at Mr. Boulware's discussion, though important for him to be there, Mr. Carmody had already taken care of a lot of things and opened a lot of doors. And that's one of the things that he and his team, we've got, I call them the A-team. We've got the A-team up in Tallahassee. I don't know much about their Washington office, it's new, but every time we get something from them, it seems to be spot on. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that our state lobbyist is more, it's more of a direct relationship. They really, with Tallahassee, and that's a direct to us. With Washington, anything we do in Washington, it's never going to be that direct relationship. And so, I mean, that's how I look at it. Like I said, on the level of communication, we've never had a better. But we're just so small. We just don't register on their radar, is all we do. One of the things that Maurice has asked us to do, we've been feeding them our COVID expenses, because they are using our COVID expenses to show the impact to small cities, to the legislative delegations, you know, and we now send that to him almost daily. And he sends it back, thank you, I'm going to forward this on to your legislative delegation. So he's using our information to help lobby for COVID funding for small cities. Now, it may not be directly for a veto, but it, you know, on the scale of what the federal government works at. So that's the thing, is that I don't think you're ever going to see anything direct like you get with the state from them. I don't think you'll see it. And like the mayor said also, the state has a federal office now too. It sort of funnels in. And so
So is it the benefits is it hard to quantify if we're not using dollar amounts?
I would say yes. It's very hard to quantify their benefit to us. And, you know, they give us information. That's really what they're doing. And they, like I said, they did try to help with these grants. They told us there's going to be another, you know, that's been the answer so far. Well, there's another round coming. You know, we're going to put you back in. But the way I look at it is on the federal level, we just don't register on their radar. That's our problem. Now, should we ever reach 50,000 population and become an entitlement city, then that's a whole different ballgame. You know, we are on the federal government's radar then. But with the way we are currently now, it's always a struggle. I struggle with the federal lobbyists just because I understand what they're doing for us, but if you had to ask me, is there a direct relationship like I have with Mr. Kamadi? I don't have the same relationship.
And do you think, in view of our current situation, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll ask anyway, that kind of relationship or information from the federal level would be advantageous to us, because if I understand correctly, maybe there's going to be more monies or opportunities from the federal level that are going to be presented. And then would they be, in your opinion, a valuable asset in navigating those waters? Or, again, maybe not so much?
Honestly, the way I look at it is that if we really need federal assistance, we could get it through our state lobbyist. And it might cost us a little bit more money. We might have to revise their work order to do it. But I think we could get that through them just as easy. The thing that, like I said, with our federal lobbyists, the federal government is not doing earmarks now.
Okay.
And so if we were up there actively going after money like we do in Tallahassee, I'd say, yeah, we need someone up there speaking for us. But right now, they're up there lobbying for all small cities to get more CARES Act money. And we're always going to be in that category where the money's going to go to the state and then it's going to go to the county.
Right,
Because the state's only going to deal with the county.
Right.
And then the county's going to filter to us.
right.
You know, and
Okay.
luckily in Seminole County, we're one team. And, you know, we're doing everything together as far as CARES Act is concerned. So we've got a good flow there. And we've got good people working for the best interest of everyone on the CARES Act. So, you know, like I said, I struggle with the federal lobbyists because like I said, the amount of interaction has never been better, but we're just not on that federal radar that they can go get us stuff. You know, there isn't federal legislation that directly impacts us like we have in Tallahassee. You know, they're not trying to take away our revenue from us like they are in Tallahassee. They're not trying to go and make laws that tear down the rural boundary, you know, like they tried in Tallahassee. You know, they don't, it's just one of those things. The state lobbyist has a direct impact on us. I can't say that for the federal.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, it's difficult. And if, I would say if out of all that, I would suggest that we do what you did before, because didn't we just like say, okay, we'll put them aside for a minute, and then if we see we need them again, we'll bring them back on board? Because did we just bring them back on board, the federal lobbyists?
Their work order did expire.
Okay.
And we didn't bring it back, and then they came back anyway.
Okay.
So,
But that's the only thing up there that, you know, I would probably say, no, maybe we can, you know, better use, well, it's going back into the general fund or whatever. So, but everything else, I think, again, my concern is, again, that as we move forward as a city, I think definitely we need to start concentrating more on how do we get more businesses here. so that, again, we take the tax burden off the homeowners. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Anybody else with any? So when I look at this list up here, these are all ways of bringing in revenue, either directly or indirectly, either through grants or funding or, change in legislation, or through these different organizations, through, I consider the Oviedo Winter Springs Chamber of Commerce our commerce arm, to help us, bring in, they're the welcoming committee for Oviedo, to bring in those businesses into Oviedo. The Metro Orlando EDC, most of these things up here are ways for us to bring in additional revenue or additional funds for things. The state lobbyists have brought in quite a bit over the last couple of years for us. The federal lobbyists have not, but I know there wasn't anything in the CARES Act for us from a city standpoint, directly, without having to go through the different levels and stuff like that. There's still more money maybe yet to come. I hate to cut them loose just yet, to just see kind of what's going to exactly happen with all these next stimulus packages and everything else. But, I agree on that, if they're not going to produce, they've got to produce something for us. I mean, we've got 2 grants up there right now. If they're not able to help us with those, they're not, I agree that eventually, if they can't produce, we're going to have to cut them loose. But I hate to do it right this second. And this is a budget. These aren't items that are expended just yet. This will be brought back to us as a council to approve a contract with them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we'll bring the workbook
So,
back.
so we have those, we can have those discussions at a later date on that. So, yeah, I mean, the keychains, pens, giveaways, those are little nice things when kids come into the council chambers. I know we're not doing that right now, but it's not like these things are going to expire. We're not changing our logo anytime soon, or, rebranding or anything. So I think that's, that can stay for now. So anyways, that's all I had. Sounds like business retention can go away, and we can have further discussion on Florida benchmarking. From a
I thought
consensus.
benchmarking was gone.
I think benchmarking should
Benchmarking
go.
gone, I'm cool with it going, if you're
You-
cool with it going.
Okay, do we have consensus on benchmarking? Or do we want to?
As long as there's something equivalent that we can use.
Well, the other thing on benchmarking is like Mr. Cotton, it is labor intensive on our staff. And do we get out of it what we put into it? From all I can say is from my dealing with it, that answer is no.
If staff doesn't learn something and get $3,000 worth of value out of it just from the exercise of it, and you get nothing back from the organization, then what's the point of spending all that time?
That's my whole, like I said, when I looked at it from the public safety side, knowing some of the cities that are there and looking at some of the numbers, let's just say I wasn't positive that those numbers were accurate.
Well, I trust your judgment on that. If you found it to be inaccurate, it's
From
not a
some of the
value.
ones in South Florida, knowing the cities, so, I didn't see a value in it, I went to their workshops, it's labor intensive, and if we're not getting out of it what we're putting in, both in fiscally wise and staff wise, I don't see any reason to keep it.
Yeah, again, it's like we discussed a little bit earlier, it's about standards, and it's about accountability, and the ability to be able to audit those numbers to make sure that they are reporting on what they say they're reporting on. That just
Is this
doesn't-
mostly a crime data
No,
exercise?
it has all different type of information.
Covers the entire organization, with the exception of a few
But
departments.
you're not trusting the numbers, and to verify them, you got to contact the cities to verify how they got them, because there's no standard on what, an example is, just, if talking about calls for service. Well, some cities say it's a radio call, or it's a traffic stop by an officer. Some cities say, well, it's the school resource officer going out to school every day is a call for service. Well, if they count it and you don't, then they're going to have a higher number, and you're not counting it, so you're not counting the same things. And if we're all not counting the same things, how valuable is the data?
And one of the things too that always bothered me, and this was more on the building side, over in development services, the building is the only one that's tracked. And there was no requirement that you fill out the entire form. Now, in Oviedo, we do. We fill out every data item that is required. We provide the data. Some cities don't. They might provide half of it. And so you don't get a true comparison when you're doing it. And I know when I was in development services, that was my big struggle, is that I would look at other building departments and I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, they didn't give, you start looking at number of responders, and all of a sudden in this one category, one that's important to me, the response rate goes way down. So then I'm sitting there going, okay, I know I required our staff to input, and there were a couple of cases, we were the only city responding. And that bothered me. But it also made us look good. On the code enforcement side, it made us look really good, because we were filling out, But yeah, I often struggle with the building side of things because of that, because a lot of building departments weren't providing all of the data. And we've done some recent digging too as well, and there may be some issues in the organization that it's struggling. So.
Okay.
Can we collect similar data just on ourselves so we know how we're doing for
Yeah, like
internal
Seminole
usage?
County does that, and they make it into this neat little collage every year, and it'll be like, X%, you've probably seen it, look at the state of the county report, it's really neat.
We do that, Mr. Britton.
Do we?
Yeah, every time we put out the quarterly, now I can't remember the name of the document. Anyway, we put out information every quarter, and we do track it. We do track ourselves, yes.
Okay,
In addition, we do track certain things within the budget as well.
that I know.
Yeah.
All right, so do we have consensus on removing the Florida benchmarking? Yes? Okay, it sounds like we have consensus on that one. All right, so I think that's where we're at. I think we can move forward unless anybody else has anything else to. All right. Mr. Boop?
So everything remains the same. We can take the $8,000 and put that over in the reserve for contingency. And we'll end up with a balanced budget. So everything, if we go back to the left-hand side of the model then, Kelly, pretty much nothing changes. So we still have to solve this use of fund balance here, 344, 240. We'll do that by plugging it up into use of fund balance revenue line item, and we will be balanced at that point. Okay?
So for the federal lobbyists then, their contract ends September 31st. And our intention, my understanding is that we will evaluate at that time whether to utilize the $60,000 that is budgeted, or whether to liberate that and keep that locally to address capital expenditures. Am I understanding
No,
this correct?
to put into contingency.
Contingency, gotcha. Okay.
Could I ask counsel for this? Would it be worth it to reach out to the state lobbyists to see if there would be any increase for providing a federal level service as well? Maybe we may be able to save some money through that route.
Could we also investigate what services the League of Cities is already providing us? Because they are asking questions constantly. I don't know if you guys are getting those as well, but they're asking for feedback from the city level so they can go to DC and try to advocate for small cities. And that 50,000 mark, that really is the kicker. So we're smaller than a gnat on a beach ball as far as DC goes. We're always going to end up having to negotiate directly with the state for FEMA money. Same thing, FEMA is going to go to the state and then trickle down to us. And the CARES Act, I've been in touch with Stephanie Murphy's office in the last week, just asking, what are the odds that DC is going to want to deal with 400 or whatever it is cities in Florida, not to mention the 50 other states. I mean, there's just too many of us for that to even be an achievable task. So I don't envision that happening.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that reaching out to the state lobbyists and have that discussion and just kind of see, and then, that can be something that's brought up when we're discussing the new contract.
We can do that.
It's a good idea.
We'll bring both work orders back to you.
Okay.
And then with the league information and Conference of Mayors as well, because even though we're not members of the Conference of Mayors, they're doing the same thing. They keep asking for.
I thought you were a member.
We ended up not joining.
Oh, really?
Because we're a small city, and they're letting me like hang out and learn without us having to spend any money to join, so that's kind of great.
I think the Florida League, yes. I
Yeah.
would recommend that, but as far as the League of Mayors, I would probably say that's probably not going to be.
Well, no, League of Mayors is, I don't think adds much value.
Yeah.
League of Cities is great, and League of Cities then goes on to the national level, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, they have the national level stuff. So almost every day, they're sending a federal level update and saying, hey, reach out, because cities who are, $500,000 or bigger can get direct funding from the feds. So I'm not in that bucket, but I'm watching as they're all trying to get more funding for cities in general.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. With that, the general fund is now officially balanced, and we will move that forward for adoption at the city council meeting on September 10th. So if we can, Kelly, let's go to attachment number 5. Attachment number 5, essentially, what this is the vehicle replacement fund. It's a special revenue fund. It's where we hold contributions for the purpose of purchasing additional vehicles. So one of the things that was identified as a priority next year is the purchase of a ladder truck. So we are going to move forward and do that. We will pre-fund it, like we said, and at the end of the year next year, sometime in August or September, we will issue an RFP for a lease, and depending upon the rates that come back, or depending upon the lease terms, whether it be 7 years or 10 years, as Kelly so well noted in the agenda memo, it will either yield a $7,000 or $70,000 savings in lease payments going into 2021, or 21-22, excuse me. In addition to that, we are budgeting the replacement of a bucket truck for next year and various different vehicle replacements totaling $215,000. We don't have an exact list yet. We're going to meet with the fleet division, see what the priorities are, and move forward from there. Closing costs anticipated on the lease is about $50,000. Hopefully it's less. Usually it's between 30 and 50. So that rounds out the use of the proceeds from the vehicle replacement fund. Any questions? Okay.
That's great, we're getting a ladder truck.
We need a ladder truck, man. For a couple of years, we need it.
And did you, Mr. Boop, was that in the back of your mind, or Kelly's mind, when you were thinking about that purchase, the lease purchase, that you're going to, the arrangements you're going to make for this particular lease purchase? Was that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do normally.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Pollock actually walked through that very well a few meetings ago with having a kind of a lease plan in place. It's what we do here, with what we can afford to do. So,
Councilwoman, if I could, the ladder truck, that's always been the plan. It was being able to bring these other items into it that shifting it into this was actually really what helped us out tremendously. Because those other items were over in the other list for a while. And being able to include them in with the ladder truck has really helped us out a lot. So
It's like a
that's not
miracle.
normal. That's not normal, but the ladder truck, yes, that was always.
Bringing that up.
And the cost of debt right now is so low, which you'll talk about soon enough.
In a couple of minutes.
And this is a little bit off tangent, but for the Charter Review Committee, I know issuing a greater amount of debt than 5 million was something that I think was on their radar. Are we going to be resuming that soon? Because I don't want to get too far along, because that's like, about a third of what we're allowed to issue in a single year. If something were to come up, if we have giant, we're in a good place financially. I can't imagine we're going to be in a really bad spot, but do we
Yes.
have plans to resume?
Yes, the
Okay.
plan is, what I'd like to do is get us through September, get the budget adopted. That's our big thing. That's our primary goal right now, is get the budget adopted. And then hopefully resume in October, is what I hope to do. I need to talk to Darren. I haven't talked to him in a while. And also, we need to reach back out to the committee members, see their comfort level as well. But yes, I would like to get them back going again in the fall.
Okay, and then the idea would be to get it on the November ballot, I guess? Okay,
That would be the idea.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, going on to attachment number 6. Attachment number 6 is the utility, water, sewer, and utility fund. Looking at the revenue forecast for next fiscal year, we are projecting that water revenues increase $206,000. We're also looking at reclaimed revenues increasing by $66,000, and sewer revenues going up by $452,000. The increase for sewer revenues looks like a lot, but it's because we understated the budget for the previous fiscal year. So actually, if you go back and you compare actual year over year, the actual increase is more in line with water revenues, about $200,000. Again, it's just because the previous year's budget is a little bit understated. Looking at meter installation and reconnection, we went back, we took a look at the previous years, and we just don't see the activity in this line, so we're reducing it a little bit going into the next fiscal year. Intergovernmental revenues, this is going to remain flat. That's a reimbursement from the feds for the interest rate component of the Build America bonds. It's a refund of the interest that we actually pay. Other revenues, again, just like the general fund, it has a significant interest component to it. Last year, we were bumping along between 3 and 3.4%. Now we're right around 20 basis points, so there's a significant drop in revenue for the next fiscal year. Use of fund balance as of right now is $4.4 million, and that has a direct relationship to the capital expenses that are programmed down here underneath expenses. Looking at salaries, really none of these flow just like they do in the general fund. Salaries and benefits 3%, overtime down slightly, workers' compensation and general insurance, again, those are based upon the renewal premiums that are negotiated with Public Risk Management. Vehicle replacement fund based on needs here in the utility. Operating expenses decreased slightly over the previous year. Great story here. A couple of years ago, Bobby sat down with the staff and challenged them to be innovative, to take a look at their operations. If cost wasn't an issue, what can we do to make our systems work better? So as a result of that, there's been an improvement in 2 significant line items. One is sewer water that's being sent over to Iron Bridge, and another one is the purchase of reclaimed water. So both of those line items are down significantly as a result of some of the improvements that have been made within the utility, and they've been very innovative. Again, capital expenses, those are what they are, and the reserve for contingency stands at about $100,000. So total revenues, 20.9, total expenses, 13.6, contribution going into, operating contribution going into transfers in and out, transfers in from the general fund to pay for the loan associated with the building of the new fire department, transfers out, that entails a $2.1 million transfer to the general fund. about $101,000 contribution to the IT Technology Fund, and a $1.1 million contribution to Renewal and Replacement Fund for the renewal and replacement of assets within the utility itself. Transfers out debt, that is the debt service that is associated with all the outstanding debt with the utility. So going into the end of the year, we've got an $8.7 million cash balance and a withdrawal from operations based upon, again, the capital that we're putting in play for the next fiscal year before consideration of any new debt service, which we'll talk about in just a minute, yields a projected ending cash balance of $4.2 million. Any questions?
What's our balance in the renewal and replacement fund?
I'm sorry?
What is the balance in the renewal and
Cash
replacement?
balance?
Yes.
That's about $1 million.
$1 million, okay.
It fluctuates, it goes up and down based upon the monthly contributions and the monthly spend.
Got it.
The next fiscal year, it should, the overall balance should be about 1.9 based upon the policy of 50% of depreciation.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay? So it's a very robust fund, it's a very solid fund.
Nice.
How often do we do rate studies and adjust that?
We should, our policy calls for rate studies to be done every 3 years. Really, they should be done every 5, okay? We haven't done a rate study recently because it's just been timing. We haven't been able to get it in because we've had so many other things going on and conflicting with that. Are we going to do a bond issue? Are we going to do this, that, or the other? But I was trying to line up a rate study for this fiscal year because the concern is that we don't look like we did the last time we did a rate study. We've had significant growth in not only residential, but also commercial. So you have to go back and take a look at the overall rates to see if the rate blend is adequate. When you look at the utilities, it's a zero-sum game. Revenues have to equal expenses. You don't have a choice. It has to be self-supporting.
Is
But
that accurate, though? I thought we could charge whatever the market will bear for certain things. For the streetlight fund, it has to be exactly equal, but my understanding is that under Florida law, utility, sewer and water, you can charge whatever the market will bear.
I'm not familiar with that aspect of Florida law, but here, we don't charge any more than we need to take in, basically to pay the expenses and debt service. We're not out to make a profit, okay?
That's where some cities get into issues, and it's usually more on the electric utility side.
Yeah.
Where they'll raise their electric utility rates and then take and do the transfer to the city through those electric utility, accounts or those enterprise funds. But what we're doing here is the proper thing to do is to keep the enterprise fund.
Keep it as a true escrow account, amount in, amount out.
Yeah.
Self-supporting, self-sustaining. Any questions about the utility? Okay, Kelly, if you can, flip over to the next. Here, this just basically is a presentation. When Kelly went through and did the audit this year of funding sources, she found that $500,000 in capital expenses could be better paid out of Fund 408, which is the Water Impact Fee Fund. So this statement basically tells you that we took $500,000 in expenses out of the water utility and put it where it belongs in the Impact Fee Fund. Going to attachment number 8. This column right here is what we're funding for capital this year. All these items down through here, plus this $20,000. This renewal and replacement is actually $1.1 million being sent over to the Renewal and Replacement Fund for funding for the next fiscal year.
For the CUP, we have to pay $50,000 a year for that? Is that just the going rate for consumptive use permit?
I cannot answer that question.
If it's a renewal,
So this is our renewal year then?
yeah, because you.
I thought we had like a
it's
10-year, 50, something crazy long for our
Right.
CUP.
And we were one of the first cities to get a 30-year. But I do believe we're coming up on a renewal.
Okay, so if we get another 30 years, then we don't have a $50,000 a year expense, potentially.
I don't think so, but that's
Okay.
not, we'll need to check with Mr.
All
White
right,
on that.
thank you.
Can't answer that question tonight, but I'll get the answer for you. Any other questions? Okay, going to the next attachment, attachment number 9. We have been working with Mark Galvin of Hilltop Securities and looking at the 2010 B bonds, which was a significant component for the purchase of the Alafaya utility, about $30,820,000. We started looking at it almost a year ago for debt service savings. At the time we started looking at it, we projected about $3.1 billion in debt service savings if we were to refinance it at that time. At the end of the year, because there had been a significant decline in the Fed funds rate, the bond markets became very competitive. We took another look at it. At that point in time, we had savings or debt service savings right about $5 million. Well, just recently, we've done another survey. This is the result of that survey. And we're looking at debt service savings if we refinance the 2010 B bonds early August. We have to wait until October to do that. But if we were to refinance them now, we would have debt service savings of $7.1 million over the life of the remaining note. That yields debt service savings on an annual basis of about $355,000, okay, to the utility, which is significant. All right? Now, we talked a few moments ago about having to do additional capital projects within the utility. So, Kelly, if we scroll down here, this grid right here basically presents to you additional debt for the water and sewer utility of approximately $3.6 million. That's all we have left of the $5 million that we're able to issue for this calendar year, all right? If our debt service ceiling was higher, I would like to take this as high as we possibly could to make the sum difference between these two zero, just to fund the capital projects that we need to fund over in the utility. But we can't because we're restricted by that debt service window, by charter, right? So what we're proposing is that sometime in October, that we bring back to you a proposed financing, new debt of $3.6 million. The annual debt service associated with that will be $220,000 a year. So net between the two deals, there's $135,000 a year in annual debt service savings. Between the two, 7.1 and 4.4, there's about a $2.7 million overall debt service savings. So from a finance perspective, I look at this as free money. We can go out, build some new assets in the utility, and basically it's a free borrowing, if you will. So it's a great deal for us to take advantage of. I've never seen this in my career. It has a lot to do with COVID-19, the flipping of the market where the Fed funds rate was in December. So I look at that as a very good opportunity for us, and I hope that I would like to ask if we have consensus to move forward with that tonight, so that we can bring the deal back to you sometime in October.
Free money.
It is free money.
But could we go one step further and fund the fire engine, since we have enough in reserves to just do it this year? That would allow us more free money next year to do things that have to be done anyway. Does that make sense?
The debt service is next year for the lease funding. For
Understood, but
It's
could,
2020.
could it
Yeah.
still be then?
It's calendar
Gotcha.
year.
Okay, we can't get the loan to happen any
So
sooner.
talk to the people on the charter committee.
Well, I don't think we're allowed to,
Oh.
or are we?
I'll check into it.
Okay, because my understanding was we could talk to them, but they can't talk to each other.
Yes, no, they can't talk to each other, yes.
But if we could, I would love to make this debt service savings, debt service neutral. But I can't because I don't have the amount of principal to do that.
What's the size you would like to see coming out of charter review? If you could pick.
Minimum 10 million.
10 million? Okay.
Well, you could,
Well, I'm sorry.
you could separate it out for the
Exactly.
utility. So if it was the general fund,
Under the charter, we can still do that?
well. I
5
mean,
million per,
Well,
I think it's total, right?
well, that's what no, I'm saying that's what the charter says right now. No, I'm
Oh,
saying for
gotcha.
for them to review,
per
like,
fund.
if you give the utility a little bit more leeway than the general fund,
Yeah.
Because, the utility, like Mr. Boop says, it's a zero sum. We're trying to keep the utility running. I mean, if certain things happen at the utility level, they're going to cost well over $5 million to fix.
That's why we keep so much cash on hand in the utility, because we only have a $5 million block to work with. Okay. Also, it's been suggested in discussions with our FA, you heard me start the meeting tonight, that we had an upgrade on our GO bond rating, okay? This is a very difficult beast to upgrade because of that $5 million limitation. Wall Street looks at that as a credit negative, okay? Not a credit positive, but a credit negative, because if you were to incur something significant in the utility that needed adjustment, you're limited to the $5 million. So if we could upgrade that, it would be beneficial to us to do that. So, but I like Mr. Pollock's idea of separating the two, maybe perhaps 10 million for the utility at a minimum, and whatever the number ends up being for the general fund. I don't know what that number is without giving it some thought, to be honest with you.
Well, the last discussion was 10 million for general fund.
Was it as well? Okay.
That was the last discussion. They didn't separate out for the utility, but I will give you an example. In the charter, there's special provision for when we purchased the the sewer treatment plant. Because it says 5 million any calendar year, provided you have proper financing. And it says, with the exception of the $36 million bond that we did to purchase the wastewater treatment plant, So, I mean, it carved it out. So, yes, sir, it's possible to do that.
So this is a great deal. We're issuing an RFP now to select our underwriters on the deal. We'll be meeting with Wall Street, going through some credit reviews, just like we did recently with S&P. And hopefully we'll end up with some really good news sometime in October and bring back to you a really great deal. So,
Could we, instead of financing the fire truck next year, do it the one, or is it the same difference because the rates are good now, so it doesn't matter what we're financing? Is it?
actually, the reason why we can't lay over another year is because if we lay over another year, we will have a negative $1.4 million cash balance in the vehicle replacement fund.
Gotcha.
We don't want that to
Okay.
show up on audit,
Okay.
okay? Not only
Because
that,
we couldn't just move it from contingency or some other
there's
place?
not enough money there.
Okay.
And the other issue that we're running into too is interest rate risk. The longer we extend that deal out, and the longer the economy has to recover, the more likelihood that there will be an increase in rates. So we really want to cut that deal as quickly as we possibly can
Okay.
to save the taxpayers' money.
Yeah, the markets are just crazy right now.
Unpredictable.
They're very unpredictable.
But this free money thing here, the things that have to be done, it's looking pretty
Exactly.
great.
Great job by the folks over in Public Works. A lot of great forward thinking by the city engineer and Bobby and his folks over there. So kudos to them for this. So Kelly, if we can move on to the next exhibit. This is the Stormwater Fund. Again, stormwater, just like utilities, it's a zero-sum game. You don't charge any more than what you need to fund what needs to be done. Taking a look at the very top, stormwater revenues, even though we forecast a 2% increase year over year to the revenues, we're showing that we're only going to increase by about $7,000 next year, and that's because this estimate right here has built into it additional residences and additional commercial, okay? That didn't happen in this past fiscal year, so things have slowed down a little bit. So this is more like an adjustment to get it back in line with what we expect to collect over the next fiscal year. Miscellaneous revenue, again, interest income's going to drop. Use of fund balance is what we need, basically to balance the budget. Again, this fund tracks very similarly to the way the water and sewer fund tracks and the way the general fund tracks. Salaries and benefits, 3%. Overtime, relatively flat. Health insurance, workers' comp, general insurance, the vehicle replacement fund. Operating expenses, there's a little bit of a bump here, as you can see in operating expenses. That's because they're planning on doing a lot of pipe relining next year, okay? Capital expenses, there's two capital items. One is for Twin Rivers next year, and the other one is for Panther Street ditch repiping. So those are the two items that are being presented as of right now. If we end up with more cash than what we expect, I'm sure that there will be more projects on the list. Debt expenses are what they are. They're flat. Reserve for contingency of $50,000. And again, very small use of fund balance over the next year. Again, zero-sum game. The one thing that we have to be careful of with the stormwater is that we have to make sure that we have adequate funds on hand to meet the need of the community and fixing things as they occur. So we're taking a very close look at that for adjustments that we might need to make in the coming years. Any questions on stormwater?
Did what happened, Mr. Boop, did what happened in that pipe along near the Econ on 419, did that put a dent in any of the accounts or whatever?
Probably put a little bit of a dent in the revenues that we had, but I think that we will recover nicely from that as we go forward.
Oh, okay.
Because we lost about a month's worth of revenues for reuse over there.
That's been one of the neatest things about that. We repaired the ruptured pipe, but then we also repaired the pipe going across the bridge because there was a problem with the hangers. And since we've done those two repairs, we have not had to get any reuse water from Iron Bridge.
Okay.
We've been able to make our own. We've been able to supply our own. We get the little bit that comes in from Chiliota, but they don't charge us for it. We just take it.
Okay.
And so actually the repair of that pipe actually improved our service out on the east side of town. It's been a really amazing thing. But it did, Mr. Boop's right, we did have a loss in revenue there while it was, and who knows how long the rupture actually had. That leak, we think that leak was what was causing the loss of pressure out there.
Okay.
But it has been a remarkable thing that since we went ahead and fixed the bridge too, the way that the pressure's been working and the work that the staff has done at the wastewater treatment plant, we haven't had to purchase any reused water from Iron Bridge.
Wow.
So it's been a really good thing.
A blessing in disguise.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
It's
that's good.
it's a great story,
Okay.
actually. Kudos to Bobby and his group. Can't say that enough.
And kudos to Public Works in general, because there's the 3% salary increases, but somehow they're spending less this coming year than in the past. So I don't know if there was a position that was sort of eliminated and reallocated or not filled, but I love seeing efficiencies absorbed like that, or grown, or whatever the word is. That's fabulous.
Could have been a retirement in there. I've not dug
Yeah.
too deeply into these numbers, but there could have been a retirement in there. Or somebody could have moved to another department or what have you outside of stormwater. Somebody hired in at a lower
Yeah.
salary, so. But with that, if we can go, move on. Kelly, we've already looked at the capital schedule, but this is the last item of discussion for tonight. You were provided a list of the administrative fees for the city and the associated changes. So we need your consideration, or we need you guys to take a look at that. It will be brought back to you as a consent item. Is it September 10th, Kelly? It'll be considered September 21st, okay? It'll be brought back to you for approval as a consent item on September 21st. So if there's any adjustments to these numbers that need to be made between now and the time we present it to you on consent, please let us know so that we can make those adjustments.
There's no changes? I don't see any changes.
No, there are changes. Yeah, the changes are in red.
Can we talk a little bit about the Parks and Recs fees for non-residents?
Oh, I don't read on my
There we go.
sheet.
The Parks and Recs fees for non-residents, I mean, one of the things that, we've had discussions over this budget time was you know, we service a lot of non-residents in our Parks and Recs program. And we have this membership, non-membership, membership, non-membership for residents and non-residents. But I still feel like even resident non-members should pay less than a non-resident member. You know, I feel like there's some room there to maybe increase the non-resident fees without impacting the demand. You know, because, you know, if they're using our facilities, you know, I feel like the taxpayers that aren't using any of the facilities shouldn't be subsidizing the non-residents, you know, as much. So, I mean, that's kind of like one of the areas where I think that we could maybe increase those fees. I mean, right now, it doesn't matter because there's no one using the facilities anyways. But I think, you know, for the future, we should maybe increase the non-resident fees a little bit more. Because I don't believe it would cause a risk in the reduction in demand because, oh, there he is.
I'm thinking the same thing. And there's going to be some kind of graph where at some point you go so high that people will stop using it.
Right. What are your thoughts? Here at Parks and Recs and ran in here.
I'm going to take this down. We've actually, over the last couple of years, we've actually increased our fees with also the membership that we initiated this past year. We were kind of cooking with the new membership and had taken in, I do believe, right at around $17,000 in membership fees when COVID hit. So, you know, we felt very comfortable. We would have probably been somewhere around $60,000, $70,000 at this point had COVID not hit us. So, of course, we're hoping for the future, and that's going to help us. Non-membership fees, this is a discussion since I've been here that we've discussed. I've discussed it with quite a few city managers. I know Mr. Cobb and I have discussed it. The thing about non-memberships is, and one of the reasons we've kind of
Non-memberships or non-resident?
Non-resident fee, I'm sorry, is one of the reasons we've bumped it off and on is, of course, they're getting services that are being provided and they don't pay city taxes. But they utilize, all of our facilities, a number of our programs, yada, yada, yada. For example, Babe Ruth, not exact, but it's about a 40-60%, 60% non-resident compared to about 40% residents of actual kids that participate in that program. It might not, don't quote me exactly, but it's more non-resident than it is residents. But as Mr. Cobb's always pointed out, we, the city, serve a large area because of Geneva, Chuliota, all the way to Winter Springs, and because some of these youth leagues' boundaries go further than, of course, the city's boundaries. So for us to not, for us to possibly raise those fees too high, it could make it harder for some families to participate.
Well, for Babe Ruth, they just rent the fields as an organization, don't they?
They pay us a per head fee. And they actually do, there is how the league does it, they pay us a non-resident per head, a resident fee, but how the league does it, I think they charge a set fee, and then they pay us different accordingly. They have to provide us, as part of their roster schedule, they provide us non-resident as well as residents. That's where we get those percentages.
Okay, all right.
We always look, one of the things I want council to understand, we do look on an annual basis at all of our fees. We have bumped our fees a little bit over the last couple of years already when we did the membership fee. This year, we did bump some of the fees that are in red, as Mr. Boop alluded to earlier. We can always look at non-resident fees. I don't want to get to the point, though, to where possibly raise the fees so high, because then we could see and I will be honest, that sometimes that's a good thing, because, and what I mean by that is that, of course, we could see our revenue drop, but at the same time, with non-members, non-residents, use of facilities can then open up for residents to use a higher rate if they come out. But it's not always residents that are utilizing our facilities a lot of times too,
Right,
if that makes sense.
right.
So if we were to like double the rates and the usage went in half, we'd be in the exact same place. But then you'd have less maintenance and wear and tear.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to tell you you necessarily have less maintenance and wear and tear because you're still maintaining everything at a high, you're trying to maintain everything at the highest level we can for the community. And also to make sure that we don't have liability issues and things like that that can take place, you know.
It's
out in
trying
the
to hit
field.
that sweet spot on the
Yeah.
supply and demand curve, like the.
Because you want to be
find that-
nice. I like that people consider us the nice city where you go and you can be part of the league. The pool, the Big Kahuna, is the one where I am most interested in revisiting the rates. And I don't know how to, we've got a phenomenal swim team. And it's a great opportunity to have the Blue Dolphins here and all these other teams that are swimming there. But we need a new liner. Best I can tell, we don't have a way to fund it at this point. How do we, is there a way to get that to cover its own expenses? Because the fees would be outrageous.
Yeah, the fees
I
would be,
would-
the fees would be outrageous. Now, we are in the process right now, as you speak, Mayor. One of the things that we are looking at is, because Blue Dolphins is a contractual group, so we are looking at increasing their fees going into the new year, which is just part of a contractual obligation to that group. And then we do that to a lot of different groups on an annual basis. So, however, your point, we're not going to be able to raise the fees to be able to cover a new liner. You know, that's the type of thing. There are some things that I will tell you that myself and our recreation manager, Paul Belden, are looking at as far as a couple of things with the pool and possibly things that we might be bringing Mr. Boop and Mr. Cobb here soon as far as a possibility to be able to do a piggyback type situation. But there again, the money has to be there to be able, it might be able to be done over a number of years, but the money still has to be paid for up front. So it's something that we're looking at. We're going to try to figure it out. But no, right now it'd be really hard to try to bring enough money in to cover that type of expense.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My only issue with raising the fees, and I know that there has been that discussion between resident and non-resident, but one of the things we looked at in the budget this year is not going up that millage increase, was the issues with the COVID. And once we do start opening up, I'd be a little hesitant to start raising fees, because if we do that, that might limit some of the kids that are going to come back to the program. So maybe it's something we look at for next year's budget, but I'm kind of hesitant to raise fees this year.
Right. Yeah, no, and I wasn't, I'm not looking at residents, I don't want to, I'm just.
Even non-residents, since they do make up, for some programs, a majority of the programs, I'd hate to see, once they start up again, those kids not having that opportunity to participate because we raised the fees too high.
Right.
Don't we have some scholarship programs available, though?
We do have scholarship programs. We have our Rock Scholarship Program. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't take advantage of that program.
But
It's-
this might be a good opportunity for families where it doesn't make a difference to pay an extra $2-3, just go ahead and ask them for it. And then for those where it would, create an easy mechanism for them to, have the difference made up.
Scholarship program only works for our residents, though.
Oh, only for residents.
We do not do
Okay.
a non-resident scholarship program. It was put in place primarily for our residents.
So even what Helpful Hands does, that does tend
Money
to
goes,
just
for
for residents?
residents, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's all I had on it. Anybody else have anything else?
Nope.
No? All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Boop?
Well, that's all I had for tonight, other than I would like to thank each of you for your incredible support throughout this entire process. This has been a very difficult year. We started late. However, we did get this thing over the finish line
Also want to thank Mr. Cobb for his outstanding support throughout this entire process. He's been amazing. And I have to recognize Kelly as well. She has been just unbelievable. And so has Ms. Toder over there. And the city is blessed to have the level of talent it does here in the finance department. And kudos to those two for just the incredible level of work that they do, working weekends, late at nights, and so on, just to get done what needs to get done to bring this to you tonight. So I just wanted to make sure that they were appropriately recognized for the work that they've done. And not to mention one other person, Janet Vivian. She's been amazing as well. And you need to know that she's made a significant contribution to the overall success of the finance department as well. So with that, that's all I have.
Mr. Cobb?
I just want to say thank you to the council because we've never had this level of discussion before. We've never sat down, and I feel like that we have gone through every nook and cranny of this budget. Even though it would have been exciting if this would have been a normal year and we would have had our normal budget process, the amount of discussion and the things that we would have gone over, it really would have taken us to a whole new level. And so I echo Mr. Booth, thank you for letting us bring these things to you and to have these discussions. I'm the same way. These ladies are outstanding. And our directors too. We challenged them. We pushed them this year. Many times I felt like they wanted to, this is where we do our staff meetings now because we can all spread out. And I sit up here and they all face me at times. There were times I felt like they were going to string me up because we really did. We pushed them hard and they came through. They showed their true talent. And so this budget has been a collaboration of everybody. And I thank you all for that.
Well, we really appreciate all the hard work that everybody puts in on this.
I am amazed. I congratulate you all, Mr. Boop, Ms. Jones, and Nadia. I can't pronounce your last name, so I didn't want to mess it up, but I mean, and Ms. Vivian. I'm just so proud. I mean, coming from the last meeting we had, and I was just like, these projects need to be funded, and you found a way. And the citizens need to know, I mean, just what you did. And then to get this from Standard & Poor's, I mean, this is so fantastic. And I'm proud to be a part of this. And I thank you very much. I mean, I don't know what more I can say, but congratulations. And I hope the citizens of Oviedo realize what great work you've done in this COVID time, in a time that was really challenging. And here you kicked it up a notch, like Emerald Lagasse says you did. You kicked it up a notch, and I thank you very much.
We say BAM?
Anybody else?
Nope. Good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I know it was really rough this year, and every year kind of starts a little rough, but this one started and continued to be rough through the budget process. But we're getting a ladder truck. We were able to fund many capital projects. We're able to take care of our employees and staff. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything more. I mean, you all figured it out and got it done, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So with that, nothing else? I will call this meeting adjourned.
Oh, my.
Thank you, sir.